Welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us today for our first AllFresh national market update with a specific topic of no fuel, no food. My name's Lee Ruane, Operations Manager at SoupedUp, and I'm proudly joined here today by Matt Manno, Australia's #1 fruit and veg marketer. Matt.
Thank you very much. How are you today, mate?
Yeah, very good, very good. Like most industry, aged care at the moment, trying to navigate my way through all this fuel crisis thing. So I'm really looking forward to a chat this morning to see from your world a perspective that can be shared with the industry. So really looking forward to today, mate. Thanks for taking the time to join us.
No, and thank you for the opportunity as well. So yeah, I mean, what would you like to know?
So let's jump straight into it. I think first and foremost, Matt, there's a lot of noise about the fuel and supply issues at the moment. What is AllFresh actually seeing on the ground? Most importantly, what's first and foremost?
I think, well, look, I think we've got to sort of just recognize that fuel touches every step of produce, right? You know, from growing it to transporting it, you know, to getting it onto a plate.
Yep.
So when fuel rises, it compounds across the whole supply chain. And what we're seeing right now isn't just higher prices, it's instability, which, you know, in our industry, we're pretty used to instability, but we don't need any more bloody unstable than what it is.
No,
right now.
that's right, yeah.
Which makes our life even harder.
Yeah.
So, you know, some weeks things spike, other weeks supply tightens. So it's become harder to sort of plan and put your finger on something and just sort of, I suppose, provide a good, clean service that we usually would. It's just getting a lot harder to do that, really, if I'm honest.
Yeah. So is it just about rising prices at the moment, mate, or are we looking at more serious across the supply chain?
Nah. So I definitely would say it's bigger than inflation, right? So, you know, you've got a few different components all working together that, you know, when you consider labor shortages, you know, rising fuel costs, obviously, and just, you know, global uncertainty in general, that's a pretty dangerous triple header, you know? So it makes for a very volatile market, which is what we're seeing right now. A lot of volatility in the market and a lot of uncertainty. And it's just making, you know, our jobs, you know, a lot harder, to be quite honest with you. So yeah, I'd say inflation can be steady. What we're seeing now is volatility. So yeah.
Volatility. All right. So I suppose you just mentioned labor. So I want to touch on that more importantly. Obviously, we've got us chefs. As a chef myself, we've got a bit of an idea that people come overseas and they're picking our fruit, but we don't really think about it much more than that. I think we've got backpackers that, as chefs, we've all served at our cafes or our restaurants. But as an aged care chef, how reliant on the industry of your industry is international labour? You mentioned it. Can you touch a little bit more on it?
Yeah, sure. So, you know, international workers are, you know, throughout our farms and even in our warehouses. I'd say it's probably more on the farm. Now, as to why that is, you know, that's a totally different podcast, right? But I think, it's more of a sociological podcast. But I think, you know, my generation and sort of, you know, around my age, a little bit older, aren't too keen on working on farms anymore. They're sort of a bit, you know, happier to live in the cities rather than to live on farms. So definitely a lot of our workforce on the farms are heavily reliant on international workers. And, you know, right now we're seeing fewer people come in, you know, and the ones that do come, you know, expect higher wages, but that's being driven by, you know, higher travel costs, global uncertainty, you know, pick one, you know what I mean? So at the moment, it's definitely getting harder and harder to find workers that want to work on farms, and it's becoming a problem for sure.
And Matt, what actually happens, okay, due to the uprising costs in fuel, not being able to travel as much? That's the overseas international, and you mentioned that's what's stopping them from coming over. To just name a couple of points, What actually happens if we don't have enough pickers or packers?
Yeah.
And as you mentioned, which something that I never actually thought of was they're also working in our factories. So what happens if we can't get them over here?
So, the crops are going to be grown, right? Because a lot
Yep.
of the crops are grown by machines and whatnot. So the crops are going to be grown, so they'll be there, but whether they're being picked and packed is a totally different story, right? So
Right. Yep.
if labor drops off, crops don't get picked, packing slows down, orders get cut. So, labor shortages turn into supply shortages very quickly. And I think that's one of the things that this country especially has never really experienced, genuine gaps in markets. I'm not sure if some of your chefs last week might have realized that broccolini was extremely short and hard to get, and it still is at the moment. For about 2 weeks, though, or a week and a half, it was really hard to get, So, and obviously that, part of that is due to weather, but part of that is due to labor shortages and fuel costs and all that sort of stuff as well. So, I think, labor shortages in essence equals supply shortages, right? So,
Yep.
we're definitely going to see a lot more uncertainty moving forward.
So straight away, what I'm picking up on is we've got a fuel crisis, which you mentioned immediately in our introduction, that it affects every touch point. So straight away, where it's affecting our labour, which is creating gaps. So straight away, in the first few minutes of our podcast, maybe we're all thinking about fuel in the trucks, in the tractors, in the farms, but we've also got that labour, and you just highlighted 3 or 4 different gaps immediately for the audience today. So, no, thank you for that. It's not something I thought of. I think we take it for granted. But yeah, no, thank you very much. So you did mention, I'm actually going to skip over because I think it's where the meat of this conversation is going to go. Pun intended, actually, being vegetables and fruit and vegetables. I'm going to roll over to you. Mentioned things about, and this is where I think the chefs are really going to start to listen. You mentioned broccolini was scarce last week because of weather. Do you have any other bits of information for the chefs, like in regards to upcoming crops that aren't going to be picked? Is there anything that we can pick but we can't transport? What sort of movement over the next week or 2 weeks is there in your eyes from AllFresh's point of view that we, the chefs, really need to know right now? Is there a couple of little examples?
Yeah, so great question, really. And you've asked it at a good time as well, because we're switching over from SA season to Queensland season. So all of your nightshades, your tomatoes, your capsicums, your zucchinis, your cucumbers, they're all going to be drawn. When I say all, 90% of those items are going to be drawn from Queensland in the next couple of weeks. So I think when you consider that, the further away the produce is grown, the more expensive it is to get here. So, look, I don't have a crystal ball, and anybody in the industry worth their salt would tell you that they don't have a crystal ball either. But I think, now is the time to be really prioritizing local more than anything. There will be certain lines that will be hit harder, obviously. So like I said, anything, international lines are just going to go through the roof, obviously. And anything fragile, like your berries, your leafy greens, sort of items that are very labor intensive, are going to be, scarce and very volatile as well. So I think prioritize, your local produce. Like I said, that's going to be harder in South Australia because, we are switching over to Queensland season. Try your best to prioritize local as much as possible. Definitely the international and the fragile items are going to be the ones that get hit the hardest, I personally believe.
So, international items, just off the top of your head, I'll put you on the spot here. What international items, just maybe rattle off 3 or 4 for our chefs and catering teams? Have you got an idea on the top of your head what they should start to avoid and push to local?
So asparagus is being pulled out of South America right now. Passion fruit is being pulled out of Panama. and and oranges, of course. Right now, oranges. There's a bit of a gap in the market from it was all Valencia all the way through Valencia oranges for the last few months, and when Valencia finishes up, Naval start up, but there's been a bit of a gap especially in South Australia. So Naval Riverland won't start up for probably another week or so. Like I've been talking with growers and suppliers, and they're saying about a week. And as a result of that, we're having to fill that gap with USA Naval oranges. So, So we're not buying international items specifically for any other reason other than the fact that that's what's available right now. When local asparagus starts up, when local oranges start up, when local passion fruits start up, we will be buying the local, of course. But the reason as to why we're buying international is because there's all that there is right now, unfortunately. But whenever there is, international coinciding with local, absolutely prioritize the local. Absolutely. And give us a call, call us, ask us what's local, what's in season. We're here to help you. So, please let us,
Yeah. So I think what I've noticed is one of my questions I've got on here for you is, so some quick wins for the chefs to reduce costs quickly, because I can see after this, the last couple of months or I think it's 5 weeks to be exact, we're going to see an increase in our percentages and in our budgets. What's a quick win? You've already mentioned avoiding international, trying to go local. Leafy greens. So leafy greens was a really good one that I actually never thought of. I suppose when we think leafy greens in Australia, we've got plenty of sunshine and plenty of rain if you live down in Victoria like myself. However, so leafy greens is one that every kitchen in around Australia has a salad on there as an option on their menu. So in your eyes, you've mentioned oranges, avoiding international. You also mentioned asparagus. Now, I know we're coming into asparagus season if we're not already. What's a quick win if I've got a couple of these international items on my menu? What would be a quick win for my budget? What's something that I could move towards? Do you have any ideas for the guys? I'll put you on the spot there, Matt. So,
no, I like it. No, it's good. It makes it interesting. So you're talking about substitutions. Is that what you're asking?
Yes, substitutions. Yeah.
So, instead of asparagus, you could be looking at a broccolini. Instead of a broccolini, you could be looking at broccoli. Instead of baby spinach, you could transition to more an English spinach or a silver beet, right?
Okay.
Even instead of berries, you're looking towards more seasonal fruit. You know what I'm saying? So there's definitely plenty of substitutions that can be made. It's just a matter of being flexible enough to be able to make those changes on the spot. Not locking yourself into any specific products or any specific sizes. Right now, I think a chef's biggest lever to be able to pull on is flexibility. So trusting the substitutions and being able to, think through a crisis situation, really, to be honest with you. So, yeah.
Yeah, so I suppose what I got from that as a hospitality manager myself is we don't need to panic yet, but we need to lean on our flexibility. So I suppose as a chef, that knowledge of the seasonal fruits, and we mentioned earlier, if we need to, and we're going to have a little link in the description as well for our audience to click on and reach out to you or via your website and things like that, guys. So suggesting let's not panic buy, but let's tap into our chef knowledge and our knowledge to be able to tap into that flexibility and diversity a little bit. Yeah. So a really good one I actually never thought of was spinach going to silver beet. And although there's probably a little bit of extra prep time in there, it's a really easy substitute, creaming that spinach up and getting those nutrients in and moving away from just those instant spinaches and straight out of the box and things like that. So we've got just to cap over. So moving away from asparagus, we've got broccolini and broccoli. We've got, instead of spinach, using silver beet. and tapping into really our seasonal fruits at the moment and moving away from berries. I think what we'll do is next time too, when we get to have this chat, Matt, we might go away and come up with some more substitutions, because I do feel like the market's moving a lot. Obviously, with the volatility, the word you used overseas, is ongoing. I really think there's to help with that flexibility. Your knowledge is fantastic there, Matt. So I really appreciate it.
No worries. My pleasure.
Should kitchens, now this is, we all hear about don't panic buy, don't fuel buy, don't just, there's a steady flow of fuel coming in. Is that the same for, okay, we've spoken about flexibility, but should kitchens be changing how order in regards to bulk or their 2-day orders a week? Any ideas on that, mate?
Yeah, so it's fine. I was actually having a conversation with my brother the other day about this. So, let's say you're a kitchen that orders, every Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday, and let's just assume on all those 4 days you're ordering $150 worth of stock. Now, we don't have minimum delivery fees, so we don't have minimum order delivery fees in our business. But what I think suppliers like myself need to do with their customers is have the conversation and work together with them, sort of, instead of having the 4 days split across $150 a day, maybe say, hey, look, do you reckon you could consolidate Monday and Tuesday to a Monday order, and consolidate Thursday and Friday to a Thursday order, So, and you have a $300 order on the Monday and a $300 order on the Thursday, or a $300 order on the Tuesday and a $300 order on the Friday. You know what I mean? It's because every delivery has a cost, every delivery has a cost, right? So I think the biggest thing today for suppliers like myself and chefs is just working together and having that open channel of communication. Because transparency right now is key in this. So it's a bit of you scratch my back, I scratch your back type situation, if that makes sense.
And I'll speak for all chefs there. That's how our industry works, mate. I think I know the good relationships I had with my fruit and veg suppliers over the year, and that's definitely the chefs and the fruit and veg suppliers working together as always. Probably my advice is I'll double up on that and say, lean into your relationship with your fruit and veg supplier. I mean, I know today I've already learned that the South Australia season finishes and we're going to Queensland. With that Queensland, obviously we're moving into Queensland season. So there's obviously going to be extra costs in the transport straight away. So anything coming out of Queensland, is that correct? I'm sort of trying to take notes and take it all in as I go, but I'm just trying to do a little bit of a summary for our audience. So anything coming out of Queensland now is going to attach an extra cost because of the fuel excise crisis.
Correct. That's right. Even tomatoes right now, we received a pallet of local tomatoes, that's end of season tomatoes, that you can tell the end of season, they're starting to sort of, get very soft, and they look a little bit sort of glassy, and they've kind of got like a shade to it that just doesn't look as nice, and they're cheaper than what, the Queensland tomatoes are coming through, because the Queensland tomatoes are new season, they're large, they're beautiful looking. In my opinion, they don't taste as good, but that's just me. But they're, to a chef, they look magnificent. You know what I mean? So at the end but they're more expensive, right? So there's almost a 30% increase in the cost. You know what I'm saying? So
30%. Wow, okay.
Yeah. So we're definitely going to start to see a lot of the household items going up in pricing, and that's purely due to the fact that 90% of, like I said, all of our nightshades are going to be coming out of Queensland.
So chefs, there you go. A possible 30% increase. I'm not going to say across the board, but anything coming out of Queensland. Just as a bit of a rough idea, can I say that for our audience? So we're looking anything coming out of Queensland, guys. Start researching or tap into AllFresh. Again, reach out to your fruit suppliers. Reach out to Matt and his team after today. but we're looking at a potential 30% increase, if anything, coming out of Queensland. So I suppose my advice would be to go back to your menus, have a look what you've got on there, research the seasons, reach out to AllFresh. The links will be in the description, and start to plan ahead a little bit. We're not going to panic buy. We don't need to do that. We've spoken about some strategies around ordering. We don't need to do that yet. We're all safe. Matt's promised that we don't have to go out and do that, which is pretty good, because that adds to your wastage. If we're panic buying and bulking up with fresh fruit and veg, we all know that, then we've got some wastage going on. So we've got to try and navigate the rising cost, keep that wastage down. And we've got a few tips and tricks. Matt, I'm assuming if they go to your website, they can see what's in season, what's happening, everything we've spoken about today. Would that be right?
Yeah. I think it's a fortnightly newsletter where, what's hot, what's not,
Yeah, awesome. Yep.
That sort of thing. And look, like it's not gospel, because, like I said before, anybody working in this industry is not going to tell you they know everything, because, like I've known people that have been, my father, for example, has been in this industry for over 40 years, and even he still says he's learning, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
so,
wow.
But we can do our absolute best to give you, the most updated and the most modern insight as possible.
Beautiful. All right. Well, I think we might close it off there. We just wanted to do a nice short one for the chefs to sit while they're doing their ordering and having a listen. But I will throw it back to you to summarize everything up. And you probably already said it before, but if you could give chefs and catering departments one piece of advice from AllFresh, fruit and veg, what would it be?
So I guess you are right. We've talked, a little bit about this before, but just, be flexible, and I'm not going to tell you how to do your job, because I'm not a chef, and I couldn't be a chef. I'm telling you right now, I would struggle. My missus will tell you that I'm a very bad cook, so, but, I think if I'm putting myself in the shoes of a chef, just, be flexible and speak to us,
Perfect.
That's the biggest lever right now. Just be flexible. Don't lock yourself into anything, be a bit like a chameleon, I've heard before. Try and change your shade when necessary, because I don't know about you, but I've never operated through a fuel crisis. I mean, I'm not old. I'm only 28 years old, but I don't think anybody that's, unless you're bloody 75 years old, I don't think you've lived through a fuel crisis, right? So we're all in this boat together. We're all going to, suffer together essentially. So, let's work together in it. You know what I mean? So, call us, text us, email, whatever it is, get in contact with us, trust our substitutions, and let's really work together in this issue,
So I'm going to summarize that down for everyone. We've got to be flexible. We've got to communicate and really got to trust the substitutions. And finally, I'm not going to let you off the hook with this one. To everyone out there, audience, and we'll finish it up on this. Also, be a chameleon. So there you go.
Yeah.
How's that sound?
I like it. That's exactly what you got to be a shapeshifter, so to speak.
A shapeshifter. Absolutely love it. And there's one thing that chefs and catering, the catering teams do really well, is shapeshifting and adapting. So thank you for your time today, Matt. Look forward to hopefully another update soon. If stuff change, let's reach out and we'll keep our audience updated as we go.
Beautiful. Thank you very much, Lee, and have a very lovely day, chefs. Take care.
Hi guys, me again. This episode was brought to you today by AllFresh, the legends behind some of the best fruit and veg hitting our kitchens across our nation. I'm talking about South Australia, New South Wales, Victoria, Queensland, WA, Northern Territory, ACT, and our good friends down there in Tassie. We're talking quality produce that holds up in service, consistent supply you can rely on, and a team that gets the pressure of a busy aged care kitchen. No fluff, just great product, sourced direct and priced right. As a hospitality manager in a previous life, I wish I had Matt and his team around to help me. Let's be honest, if you care about what's on your plate, and I know you all do, check out AllFresh. They've got you covered.